Hey man, all right. So fascinating watching you guys working it all out. I think you're close. You're not quite there, but you're close. Looking at the first two videos against the gentleman that changes the position of his elbow and rises. Okay. The problems I see there, you kind of mentioned it. One of them, you could just say your cup sucks. You could say that, but it's also about finding the efficient position for your hand in the strap. Now, when you are strapping with the hidden hook being your main objective, okay, if the strength of your hand isn't sufficient to just dominate their pronation, okay, really exaggerate the wrist rise, strap like this. Really kick your wrist back, wrist and thumb back as far as you can, and get as close your forearm to your opponent as you possibly can. Okay, so you're giving away. There's no pronation, there's no drag involved in it. You're just all up there like that. Strap like that there, and then be slightly low on their position. So when you're gripping a top roller, he's going to affect your cup drastically more if you're above this wrist line. If your pinky is above that wrist line, he's going to be able to affect your hand. Okay, if you have your pinky on his wrist line, okay, dramatically stronger cup. Okay, so there are a few things. If your physical strength in your hand is insufficient, and it's insufficient if you're unable to relax in this position. Okay, the hidden hook really doesn't work so effectively if you're redlining in your hand. Okay, if you're redlining in your hand, you are going to fatigue in your hand potentially before your opponent fatigues in their pronation and back pressure and their attack. So you need to be not only just winning that battle, you need to really be winning that battle. It's an all-in. Like if we talk in fundamental arm wrestling sense, you can say, all right, how many fundamentals do I need to win? Back pressure, side pressure, wrist flexion, pronation. You got 4 main fundamentals you can choose from. Okay, the hidden hook is all about putting all your eggs into the cup basket. Okay, now when you put all your eggs into that, the way you set up, the way you move on the table, you make this, you amplify your strength. And that's the objective, is to amplify your cup to a point that it's actually way overpowered. But it does come at the cost of all those other things. And that's why when we start the match, all we want to do is establish dominance in our cup. We recognize that we can't pin our opponent using any of the other fundamentals from where we are. So strap and find the position that your cup becomes absurdly overpowered relative to your opponent, relative to the other 3 fundamentals that you possess. Okay, you're not trying to feel balanced. You're trying to feel overpowered on just cup. So find that position. Once you've strapped in a position where you're overpowered stupidly on just the cup, okay, that's when it comes down to the movement side of things. Okay, and he won't be able to pivot up like he was. He just won't. I promise you. Now, in the third video you showed me where you were using connective tissue and all that sort of stuff. Yes, be careful. As you did mention, it is more dangerous. Now, don't use your elbow as a blocking force. Okay, yes, use your connective tissue, but I want you to pivot. Okay, pivot towards, as they surge, pivot towards, try to keep the direction of your cup, remember, which is grossly overpowered. Try to keep that cup 90 degrees to where they're going. Okay, so what I mean by that is if you get inside 90 degrees, okay, then it's a different angle that you're defending. You start to have to defend with some pronation. Okay, if you are 90 degrees to where they're going, you're going to be attacking their pronation directly with your overpowered cup, thanks to the way you've set up. So all you're doing is you're refusing to let the fight go to any of those other fundamentals that you're using. You're only allowing a fight to happen. So every time you need to create a passive pressure on all those other things. So I don't want you hard blocking with your elbow. No. Yes, you are blocking you're using pressure in your elbow, not your bicep, but I don't want you blocking with your elbow. I want you gently engaging your elbow and all the other fundamentals. The only fundamental you're using is this, wrist flexion. Okay? Now you imagine you're on bearings. You're on ball bearings, and if your opponent goes that way, all you do is he spins you. Okay? He spins you this way. You didn't block here and let him take you there. You just go, oh, okay, you've turned the trailer and now I'm over here. Okay, if he goes to the back of the pad, you just come forward. If he goes to the front of the pad, you just go back. You don't force anything except wrist flexion. It's the only thing you're forcing, okay? And remember, you can always force it. Now, I don't want you to keep active on this, okay? You demonstrate clearly to your opponent that you can defeat their pronation. But once you've defeated their pronation, you relax your hand. You stay in the cupped position, but you totally relax. I want you to find a position where you're 100% relaxed. You're doing nothing, okay? And when your opponent goes to move, again, you're on the ball bearings, you just move with them, follow them, and the reason you're on ball bearings is because if you give them resistance, they can change the lane of the fight. They can change it to a fundamental like side pressure or your back pressure, or they might even try to attack your pronation. And you'll feel the urge to respond if you put walls up. You're on the ball bearings, you just move around, let them direct where they're going, and every time they try to go in the direction of a top roll or pronation, and that's ultimately where you're leading them towards. You're leading them, you're encouraging them to go that way. As soon as they go that way, just turn it on, boom, turn it on, boom. Leave it, just turn it on enough to defeat their pronation once. Okay, and then turn it off again. Don't actively do it. Don't squeeze, don't be tight. Relax, defeat the pronation, defeat the pronation. Now when you defeat the pronation, they're gonna hit the wall, and then it's gonna break down the chain a little bit more. Every time, break down a little bit more. But they keep on feeling like they want to go somewhere else. If they want to go somewhere else, again, just pivot. The only place you can't do the pivot is if they come forward at you and start wanting to press. But with dominant cup, if they do that, just turn your rise and pronation on, which should be entirely fresh because you've used none of it so far. Okay, and you'll quickly block them. Then they'll go back to looking for the most efficient path, which if you're moving well, to them, the most efficient pass will feel like a top roll. But it's not, of course. We know it's a trap. Every time they do it, you turn your cup on. Now, this will very drastically increase the fatigue on your opponent. And they will start to retreat. And they'll start to look for resting opportunities. And as they do that, it's really critical that what you do from there is not get excited too early. You passively, like we were talking about being on ball bearings, okay, using that same pressure of you pivoting on ball bearings, I want you to just move around and fill the gaps as they retreat. Now, you don't attack yet, not until you know it's on, not until you know the pin is on. Now, when you do all this movement, you just fill the gaps. Again, you still want to keep the fight in your dominant wrist flexion relative to their pronation. So, again, you just fill the gaps, you follow them, and when they attack, you need to be ready to, back over here. But what you're going to find is as they get more fatigued, the stop's going to be closer and closer to center. It's going to be up here rather than down near here, where it was originally. And you're going to just have these stops, passive stops, and you're going to end up right over here like this, with a stop on their pronation. You're still doing nothing. You're just passively filling the gaps. At this point in time, you can look them in the eye and say, would you like to pin yourself or would you like me to press you? And you can choose. Now is time to pin. Either force the issue simply like that, or let them pin themselves. Anyway, that, my friends, is how you hidden hook.